Can I just ask you the radio message every time, what that was about?
Oh, it's me every time.
You, so you're qualifying. I know you've been upset by it before, frustrated by it before. Is that what it is?
It's what?
Is it your qualifying, your Saturdays, or?
Yeah, I'm useless. Absolutely useless.
Any answers anywhere? I mean, this car, they're trying to get this car in a better position for you.
The team has no problem. You've seen the car's on pole, so we probably need to change driver.
Can a heptacampion of the world be totally useless? Those were the words of Lewis Hamilton after the classification in Hungary. But what led the most successful pilot in the modern history of F1 to pronounce that phrase? And more importantly, what does this mean to Ferrari? That statement was not simply a self-criticism. It was an emotional breakdown, a download as sincere as brutal, which revealed the unbearable weight that Hamilton is carrying this year. In Hungary, a circuit where he has won 8 times more than anyone in history, where he is supposed to feel at home, he found himself out of combat in Q2 without rhythm, without confidence, without answers. For a pilot of his caliber, this result was not just a bad day. It was an identity crisis. What makes this moment even stronger is that it occurs in a context of success for his partner Charles Leclerc, who with the same car achieved the pole position. We are not talking about a poor car. We are talking about a car that, in theory, is able to fight for victory. But while one shines, the other sinks. And that constant comparison is what has ended up emotionally destabilizing Hamilton. The interesting thing here is not only the statement itself, but what tells us about the pilot's mental state. Hamilton is not someone who expresses himself lightly. Throughout his career, he has been measured, calculator, and rarely shows his vulnerability. This time it was not so. This time there were no filters, nor discounted speeches, nor media protection. Only a broken man inside, facing a performance he does not understand, to a pressure that no longer knows how to manage, and a Ferrari machinery that seems to not know how to help him. The later scene said everything. Hamilton walked alone with the lost look, while the mechanics avoided visual contact. There was no comfort, nor palmaditas in the back, nor words of encouragement. Just silence. A silence that shouts much more than any phrase could express. Because when a heptacampion begins to believe is useless, we are not talking only about a pilot with a bad day. We are witnessing something much deeper. A real-time psychological fracture. And that, in Formula One, is perhaps more difficult to repair than any technical component. Beyond the drama of Lewis Hamilton's statements, the numbers offer us an even more raw vision, a cold and devastating reality that gives body to the collapse that we are witnessing. The 2025 season is not simply being complicated for the British pilot, he is being statistically one of the most painful of his entire illustrious career. And when this performance is dissected from a technical and comparative perspective, what emerges is an image that brutally contrasts with everything that once represented its name in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton currently occupies the 6th position in the Pilot Championship, and the most alarming thing is that he has not achieved a single podium in the first 13 races of the season. 0. For a pilot who has won more than 100 large awards and has stepped on the podium in more than half of the races he has played in his life, this is not a simple downturn. It is a statistical anomaly that questions his current level, his adaptation to the team, and ultimately, his competitive future. But the nightmare goes beyond the current season. If it goes back to its final stage with Mercedes, the run-free racing streak extends to 15. 15 great awards in which Hamilton has been absent from the trio of honor. This figure exceeds any other drought in his career and places him in an unknown territory, not only for him, but for anyone who has followed his career for more than a decade. In the Hungarian GP, that difference became even more evident. From the first free training session, the distance with Leclerc was half a second, an eternity in a circuit such as Hungaroring, where precision is everything. Even with respect to other rivals such as Lando Norris, the margin was abysmal. 0.682 seconds slower. And that is not a momentary gap due to tires or traffic. It is a direct reflection that Hamilton fails to find the point of balance with the car. And this is where the numerical becomes psychological. Because when a pilot with the reflexes, experience and aggressiveness of Hamilton begins to accumulate classifying losses in races without brightness, the problem is no longer just the car. It is trust. It is internal perception. It is the voice that, back after return, reminds him that he is no longer at the level he demands of himself. These data are not just statistics to fill out pages. They are symptoms of deep disconnection. One that is not resolved with wing adjustments or changes in the box's strategy. It is a more complex break, which feeds on emotional wear, unfulfilled expectations, and the passage of time. And that, at this point in his career, Lewis Hamilton seems to not know if he can reverse. The Ferrari SF25, the car with which Lewis Hamilton had to conquer a new glorious stage in his career, has become a monster of erratic behavior, a machine that does not respond in a coherent way to the demands of one of the most talented and experienced pilots in the history of sport. And although Charles Leclerc has shown that the car has a high competitive roof as evidenced by its pole in Hungary, the technical design of the car has revealed deep cracks that affect not only the performance, but the confidence that a pilot needs to extract every thousandth on the track. From the first moment Hamilton climbed to SF25 at the beginning of the season, he consistently pointed out the same problem: the inconsistent balance. Unlike cars that behave predictably and allow progressive adjustments, the SF25 seems to change curve to curve, return. In Hungary, Lewis described this sensation with surgical precision. You cannot say that it is only subviring or survival. It is very, very out of balance and far from being on rails. This seemingly simple phrase encloses a technical nightmare. It means that the pilot cannot develop a reliable driving pattern, and that forces him to react instead of anticipating. The balance in any Formula One car is the starting point of everything. And when there is no coherence between the front and rear axle, between braking and acceleration, trust disappears. In the case of SF25, this instability comes in part of technical decisions taken to preserve the flat background, one of the most sensitive areas of the current car. Ferrari has had to raise the wipe height more than ideal to avoid excessive wear of that critical part. The result: loss of aerodynamic load in the soil, reduction of the soil effect, and a car that becomes difficult to stabilize in extreme conditions such as Hungaroring. And the situation worsens when examining the assisted management system. What should be a tool to improve precision has become an additional source of uncertainty. Hamilton has reported that assistance changes its behavior without prior notice. In some curves it is excessive and in others insufficient. This completely breaks the pilot's rhythm, who needs to feel constant resistance to modulate curve entry with confidence. If the steering wheel responds differently in each section, the pilot is forced to adapt his style constantly, something that not even the best can do without compromising their time by return. All this is further aggravated by a technical phenomenon that Ferrari has not been able to resolve: the window narrow, or limited operation window. The SF25 only works optimally within an extremely narrow thermal and aerodynamic range. This means that a small change in asphalt temperature, in tire pressure, or even fuel load can destabilize the car completely. And in a weekend such as Hungary, with high temperatures, dense traffic, and constant traction demand, that structural fragility becomes evident. From outside, it may seem that Hamilton is simply out of shape. But what is really happening is that Ferrari has built a competitive car, but not indulgent. A car that, in the hands of Leclerc accustomed for years to Maranello's nuances, can be dominated through familiarity. But for Hamilton, which comes from a completely different philosophy in Mercedes, the SF25 is a hostile territory, where each attempt of adaptation seems to find a new obstacle. The car has speed but does not forgive. And when this technical demand is combined with a pilot who is already carrying the pressure of a radical change of equipment, the result is an explosive mixture of frustration, errors, and statements that can only be understood if the complexity of the beast that is trying to tame is understood. The SF25 is not a slow car. It is a capricious car with high potential but with wild soul. And that, ultimately, could be its greatest virtue or its most lethal defect. When Lewis Hamilton described himself as totally useless after the classification in Hungary, it was easy to keep the literalness of the phrase. Headlines, social networks, and even some analysts rushed to reproduce words as a confession of direct guilt. But doing that would be to reduce the moment to an emotional cartoon. Actually, those words should be read as a code, an encrypted message that goes beyond the individual and that, in the right context, reveals a much deeper conflict between pilot, equipment, and technical environment. It is not that Hamilton is surrendering. It is denouncing something that cannot say clearly, at least not publicly. When a pilot like Lewis Hamilton pronounces a phrase as devastating as, "They probably need to change pilot," he is not only closing a disappointing weekend, he is opening a monumental question about his present and his future in Formula One. What happened in Hungary is not limited to being an isolated episode in a turbulent season. It is the emotional epicenter of a broader crisis, one that questions not only the connection between Hamilton and the SF25, but also the project itself that Ferrari sold as the rebirth of a legend. The question that is floating: is Hamilton finished, or are we facing a pilot trapped in an ecosystem who has failed to channel his talent? Because while statistics are hitting it strongly, and the performance does not translate into results, it remains the same competitor as in 2021, fought wheel by wheel against Verstappen at the highest technical and mental level. That essence does not disappear from one year to another. But it is also true that the environment in which it competes now is completely different. Ferrari is not Mercedes, and the SF25 is not a car that forgives weaknesses. Time will say which of these two interpretations is correct. But the truth is that Hungary was not just another bad Saturday. It was the reflection of a structural tension.